Good evening, everybody. This is A Night in the World, and it's the 26th of January, 2026. That's right, it's Australia Day again. And every year it's the same old story. The left and the right in this country are going at each other's throats as to whether or not the day should be kept the same or it should be changed. And it always starts somewhere around New Year's. You start seeing Australia Day trending on places like Twitter. And then always, of course, there's the Facebook and the Instagram stuff that is ever polarizing. And look, a bit of a disclaimer for me today. I haven't been on Facebook or Instagram since before Christmas, so I've avoided the wrath of both sides of this. And to be honest, it's been kind of nice. I've been on a bit of a social media vacation, if you will, and I don't regret that. I don't regret that for a second. Has it been utopian in nature? Well, no, but nothing usually is. As you get older, those kinds of highs and things like that, they're a little more subtle. So I didn't expect the world to turn into some sort of glorious paradise when I quit social media back before Christmas. Nevertheless, it has been refreshing in some ways. Australia Day hasn't always been a polarizing day, to be honest. We kind of picked this date back in 1994, and it was based on Captain Arthur Phillip, who came out here with the First Fleet in 1788. It's based on him planting a flag at Sydney Cove, Sydney Harbour. And the reason he did that was because they went to Botany Bay down the road, a few k's south, a week before, and Arthur Phillip thought, nah, this is not very good. It's too exposed here. It's too windy. So he took another ship along with his own, and they went up and they found Sydney Harbour, and they're like, oh, now we're talking here. So all the other ships come up, they plant a flag, and they all sort of have a few beers and whatever, a few rums probably. And so that day was kind of picked. There was nothing really significant other than the flag planting. There was no formal declaration made at that time. The state of New South Wales wasn't declared then and there. It was just simply the flag planting. So in terms of significance in that, Australia was somehow founded, and it's a seriously significant day in the history of this country is a little overblown. So those two things combined, the fact that it's really only been that day since 1994, and the sort of lack of formality of the flag being planted, says to me that Australia Day could be really any day, and people might listen and go, I'm not going to appease those lunatic radical left lunatics, or whatever other names you've got for them. There are plenty. And no, I don't agree in kind of appeasing people either, especially when people are really crazy on both sides of the ledger. And the other thing is, I'm not giving these Aboriginals any more leeway than we've already given them, because if we give them this, then what else are they going to want? It's just going to be never ending. We can't appease these people. And that's another common a common thread amongst right-wing conservatives in Australia. And look, I would think that had you wiped the slate clean and said to everyone in this country, if you take off your cap, if you take off your ideological cap, your political cap, just for a day, and there's no biases and there's no kind of heartfelt feelings going on with this, and you said to everyone, hey, let's have a day in this country where we could all kind of agree on, without any particularly historical significance, you just make it any day, and that day we celebrate Australia, I think most people would say, yeah, well, that sounds great, because then we wouldn't have to worry about fighting each other all the time. So if we could all just take that hat off just for a small period of time, I think you'd find people would think kind of logically about it, and they'd be like, yes, that sounds like a good idea. But the way things stand right now is that, especially with the internet being what it is still right now, relatively the Wild West. We brought some legislation in recently about kids under 16 not being on the social media. I think it's a good idea. I digress. The internet being where it is right now, we're going to have these polarizing positions going at each other for a month or two every year, and it's like everyone wants to dig themselves in on their position. You know, the right don't want to cede any ground to those left lunatics, and how dare they want to take away our national sacred day? Well, it's not that sacred. And even in the 90s and early 2000s, people didn't see it as like celebrating Arthur Phillip planting a flag. I mean, most people had no idea what was going on. They just thought January 26th is Australia Day. I mean, some people are that far, or uneducated, they think that Captain Cook somehow had something to do with it. He had nothing to do with it at all, other than the fact he came out here, 12 years earlier and mapped the East Coast. But that's as far as he'd been dead for, 10 years or more, by 1788. So January 26th just became sort of this day, but again, at the start of it, no one cared about what actually happened on the day. It was just Australia Day. People would have the flags out and have a barbie and a few beers. But now, if you're likely to fly a flag and celebrate the day, there's far more likeliness that you're going to be doing it with there's almost a level of aggression, patriotic aggression, US style going on right now. And that shits me a little bit, because Australia has never been like that. That's not the soul of this country. And Anzac Day is turning into something similar too, and I'll probably do a separate show on that, because that really grinds my gears. The whole Americanization of everything in this country. But this whole flag waving, hand on heart, love the flag or leave type business is something that the right wing have really leaned into over the past decade or so, and it's being fueled by social media. It's being fueled by American-led influences. It's probably being fueled by Russian and other outside influences as well, trying to polarize people. You've probably got accounts coming out of somewhere in Eastern Europe who've got 300 different accounts being run by one person or one bot. 150 are right wing, 150 are left wing, and they set them free and off they go, and it just razzes up everyone who subscribes to it, especially on a place like Facebook. And you've got a left wing perspective, like the people on the extreme left who think that it's like some sort of day celebrating genocide and the stealing of land. Well, no, that's not actually what the day signifies either. Are there people out there who find the day inappropriate because of what had happened to Indigenous people in the subsequent decades that followed? Yes. And I think they've got a good point on some of that. I mean, hey, it wasn't like, it wasn't like they rocked up at the Sydney Cove or Botany Bay and the whole of the Indigenous populations of this country knew about it. I mean, there were some people over 100 years later who didn't even know that it happened. So it didn't spread like wildfire that this was happening. Nevertheless, though, the symbolism of it, and what subsequently resulted in some pretty poor treatment of these people whose land was just taken from them, I think can't be overlooked. I think it has to be acknowledged. And I do think it has to play a part in any potential moving of the day. I don't think it should be the actual main reason, but I think it should be a part of it. I think the main reason we should be moving the day is because no one really cared before what the day was, until everyone got razzed up about it on both sides. And now we've got a day where it can't be fully celebrated by the vast, vast majority of the country. I don't know what the number would be. I reckon at this point in time it's got to be somewhere between, 60% probably in favour and 40% not in favour. And that's not good enough in my book. I just don't think that's good enough. I want a situation where you're going to have people celebrating a day in an Australian way, not in an American-style, patriotic, cringe, get-me-a-bucket type, hand-on-heart, waving the flag, tears coming out of their eyes kind of BS way. Celebrated in an Australian way, where you can have something like 95% of the country on board with it. And you know what? The beauty of it is that you don't have to do anything on that day. You could have the day anytime. You could make it in August, because August is between the June long weekend and October long weekend. There's a bit of a stretch there where we all want a long weekend. Maybe you could chuck it in there somewhere. Who knows? But you can celebrate it any way you want to do it, like I'm doing here today. It's hot as hell outside, sitting in my lounge room. I've got my microphone out. and I'm just doing a bit of a rant. Or you can go out and have the flag out and go out and attend some sort of event or a barbecue with friends. You can do whatever you want. There's no rule saying you've got to do this on this day, and that's the beauty of this country. No one's obliged to go out and do something patriotic. But to have a day that just says, hey, you know what, this country's a bloody good country. Sure, there were some things done in the past that were really bad, and we can't help that now that we're here. And you know what, if someone tried that shit right now, we'd be 99% of the country would be we'd be like, this is unacceptable. This is outrageous. We wouldn't let it happen. So we've learnt that. And that's a good thing. But I just think we've got to celebrate this country for what it is. There were people here before. The English came here with all these convicts. The convicts were freed. They earned their freedom, many of them, over time. Very few of them went back. They stayed here, and then we had immigration come out, predominantly from England and Ireland, Scotland, the Wales, British Isles. And then later on, we had more people come from different places. And then after, the 50s, we had a lot of people come out from Southern Europe, the Greeks and Italians, and then we had the Lebanese, and then we had Vietnamese and Sudanese now, and, all these people have had their problems when they've come out because a lot of these people come from pretty bad places. And their cultures have been different. Trouble now with all this stuff with people, about immigration. They say that they're opposing immigration because of infrastructure. It's not about that. They just don't like the idea of these people being different. No one likes the idea of someone coming here and causing trouble, and I fully agree with them. If someone's going to come out here and cause trouble, break the law, do terrible things, then they can't stay here. But for the majority of the time, people have been pretty good. I'm digressing a little bit again. The point I want to make, though, today is that I'm not against this day being moved anymore. I used to be a little more dug in about the idea because I didn't want to cede any ground to crazy people sort of on the left. And, no one wants to see crazy people getting their way because they throw a tantrum. It's like a kid at the supermarket throwing a tantrum because they don't get a Mars bar from the stand at the checkout. If you appease this kind of stuff all the time, then they'll think, oh, well, every time I throw a tantrum, I get what I want, and, you see the consequences of that with people like Donald Trump. But I don't think this is that clear cut. I don't think this is that clear cut. There are a small minority of people who've gone way overboard with this in terms of the whole genocide type talk and all of that, and the stealing of everybody's stuff. And yes, that stuff did happen to a small degree, but it wasn't an armada that rocked up on January 26, 1788, or the 19th of January, 1788. It was a fleet of 9 ships with convicts on them. And yes, they took the land. They were going to take it regardless, but it wasn't designed to come here to deliberately genocide and steal everyone's stuff. They had this notion of terra nullius, meaning that the place was uninhabited, because they didn't rate the indigenous people. That's just what people did back then. They did not rate anyone who was deemed uncivilized, so therefore they felt they could do whatever they wanted to them. And even if they were civilized, they probably would have shot them with their superior firepower anyway. So we don't agree with that stuff anymore. We have to acknowledge that some of it happened. But we also have to acknowledge that wasn't the sole purpose for it happening. So let's find a middle ground. I think we can change the day. I think we could do it responsibly. It probably requires a referendum, I think. I think that's probably the responsible way to do it. Referendums aren't good at getting up. I know that. Well, maybe it has to be taken to an election. But sooner or later, I wouldn't expect it in the next few years. There's probably bigger fish to fry right now. But I think sooner or later you're going to see that change. And we can have it any day, like I said. We can have it any day. Australia Day. Celebrate the country and everybody in it. Everybody that's been here before. Everybody that's come since. Everybody that's alive right now. The greatest country in the world. And I think that's the only way forward. And I want to see it happen eventually at some point in time. Thanks for listening, everyone. and we'll see you next time. All the best.